Winslow, and Ms. Aletha Mann for her administrative assistance for helping set this up. And if you see James Wall from Aramark, you want to thank him for the what we call the corrections breakfast, which is coffee and bear claws. I think Aramark provided that for us, so we thank him for that. The meeting will be recorded, and also, is this on there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just want to make sure. Please place all your electronic devices in the silent mode. We will review the changes of Florida model jail standards that have been submitted. And this is not a forum for cases currently going through the judicial process, so we don't want to step outside our bounds. And if individuals in the audience would like to make comment for the record, please proceed to the podium and state your name, organization, and comments. And with that, we will have benediction.
Okay, so if you would please rise, remain standing for the pledge of allegiance. Please bow your heads. Dear my Father, we thank you for this beautiful day. Thank you for this wonderful facility that hosts this event. Thank you for the opportunity to meet and make improvements to the process for Florida model jail standards, which are just minimum standards that affect so many people in the state of Florida. Dear my Father, we thank you for all the many blessings each and every day. In Jesus Christ's name, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty,
First
we'll
item
do a
is
roll call.
Yes, sir. Roll call. Sheriff Mark Hunter.
Here.
Sheriff Gary Borders.
Here.
Sheriff John Rutherford.
Here.
First item is the minutes from the previous meeting. Oh, we do have.
Yeah.
And also all the legal notifications have been posted.
Okay, do we have any comments on the minutes? Everybody good with the minutes? All right. We have a motion to accept the minutes. We have a motion by Sheriff Hunter. Second by Sheriff Borders. All in favor say aye. Aye. Minutes are accepted. All right.
First item up is an addition to the agenda submitted by Steve Casey, the Executive Director of Florida Sheriff Association. I'd like to ask Mr. Isaiah Denard to come up and present standard 2.06.
Welcome, Isaiah.
Good morning. Our Executive Director, Steve Casey, was approached by several sheriffs a couple of months ago in reference to the Florida model jail standards and how reports are submitted and who they're submitted to. In some areas of FMJS, sheriffs were not being notified of those deficiencies in their facility. Standards originally did not call for it. It just says you will send a report to the officer in charge. So we submitted this proposal to not only submit the report to the officer in charge, but also to the sheriff upon completion by the jail inspector. Formal letter was sent to the chair, Sheriff Rutherford, in reference to this for consideration by.
And all the other date requirements and deadlines are the same. It's
Yes, sir.
just adding the sheriff to the
Yes.
notification.
Yes.
All right. Any discussion? Have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Sheriff Borders, second by Sheriff Hunter. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion is approved. Thank you, Isaiah.
Standard 104. The only change in this standard, Sheriff, is we're taking out the double cell definition. Chapter 1 is primarily all definitions. Taking out the definition of double cell, which is a single cell designed to house 2 inmates.
Okay. Alrighty, that's approved by the subcommittee.
Yes.
Anybody? Any discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Sheriff Borders, second by Sheriff Hunter. All in favor, say aye. Approved.
Standard 106. These are all standards submitted by the, submitted by the task force. Changing, with the exception of inmate workers down there in 106. Just moving it from the end of the paragraph up until where it makes sense and make it appropriate.
Yeah, there's been a lot of confusion about this because of supervision of inmate workers by civilians. Okay. And this is a recommendation by the
Task
Medical
Force.
Review Subcommittee.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion. I'll make a motion. Sheriff Hunter,
Second.
second by Sheriff Borders. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approved.
Standard 128. Formal jail standards. Cleaning up the language in there. Felt including but not limited to is really what's required. We'll just move it down to read all rules and procedures for all county municipal detention facilities, including but not limited to construction, equipment, maintenance, operation, cleanliness, and so forth.
Okay. No substantive change. Recommended by the Standards Review Subcommittee.
Make a motion.
Motion by Sheriff Borders.
Second.
Second by Sheriff Hunter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Standard 1.30, dealing with non-secure custody holding of juveniles. Changing paragraph delta, that in no event shall the area be designed or intended for use for striking out residential and put for inmate housing purposes. Nowhere else in the Baltimore jail centers is
Doesn't
talking
say
about
residential.
Residential, it's talking about inmate housing.
This just brings it in line.
You got the language on it?
Yeah. All right, recommended by the committee, subcommittee. Have a motion. Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
I was a
Sorry about there, sorry, I was too.
I was a sergeant at one
Then,
time.
second by Sheriff. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Standard 131, taking out the word other. All violations, all notable violations, all violations that are not serious. You either have serious or notable violations, and whether the other is just not required.
Yeah, that's another word, Smithing. All right, recommended by the review committee.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by
Second.
Sheriff Borders, second by Sheriff Hunter, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Standard 133, changing the wording from permanent file record maintained as required by the Florida Department of State General Records Schedule GS1 is held for state and local governments. General Records Schedule GS2 for law enforcement, correctional facilities, district medical exams. GS4 for public hospitals, health care facilities, and medical practitioners. Just expanding and explain what the record retentions are.
Just gives the guidelines for the record.
Yes, sir.
Let's do it correct.
Yes, sir.
I think what this does is recognize that we also are a healthcare facility that requires certain record retention that we haven't acknowledged in the past.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Sheriff Hunter, second by Sheriff Borders. All in favor, say aye.
Standard 1.40 explains more what a serious violation is. Throughout the Florida jail standards, all serious violations are indicated in bold print and also on the checklist. And just explain what the standards for which a violation would be considered serious are indicated in bold print and asterisk within the standards and all inspection report checklist.
No, correct me, I understand, this cleans that up to where that, if there's a violation at some point, or a serious violation, where the facility can somebody can come in and take over the facility, and this cleans that up to more identify that?
Yes, sir. Well, also, it explains to the inspectors that if you have a serious violation, that they have to report it and then come back and within 24 hours and re-inspect. And then just put the agency on those.
Okay.
These are only those that life and limb.
Yes, sir.
That sort of thing.
Life, health, and safety.
Yeah.
Motion
And
to
it was, they were scattered out through there and didn't really, they weren't really that specific before.
They're all the serious violations are all in bold print. They're just never outlined or never stipulated in the standards.
Why they
Why they would all.
And then that they had to be re-inspected within 24 hours?
Right.
All right. I have a motion. Motion to approve. Motion by Sheriff Hunter, second by Sheriff Porter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Standard 1.42, normal sight and sound for purpose of supervision within the facility. Security post is located to ensure visual contact with the inmate. This may be accomplished through means of electronic surveillance, provided that a certified officer is immediately available to hear and respond promptly to calls for help. A lot of agencies are going to electronic monitoring, but you still need that correction officer in there to be able to respond.
Well, this is going to help some of the smaller agencies too with staffing. I mean, and as long as you've required someone to be there to monitor it, rather than having somebody physically there, I think this is going to be a big help there.
Yes, sir.
And as long as we're doing it right, I don't have a problem with it.
Give it a motion to approve. Second. Motion by Sheriff Porter, second by Sheriff Hunter. All in favor, say aye.
Standard 145, just deleting the entire paragraph, physical system.
You're taking the standard out.
This is where DLC comes in and provides technical assistance. It used to be M33A, the administrator would request assistance from the DOC. When DOC did the inspections, it's on the next page.
So it was actually required for them to call in and ask
Right,
if they have any issues. So now we're taking that requirement out because they don't.
That used to be the inspections.
Yeah.
So it's no longer required. All right, we have a motion
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, second by Sheriff Williams. All in favor, say aye.
Standard, moving into chapter 2, standard point 202. We're adding the requirement, maybe Isaiah may want to come up and speak on this, adding the requirement that every 4 years that the jail inspectors they are required to complete an online course. We're finding that is not sufficient.
Isaiah?
To go along with what David was saying, throughout the year, my 3.5 years at FSA, we get a lot of calls from agencies, administrators, when inspectors are on site. Holding agencies accountable to something either they're not trained to do or it's not covered in the standards. In conversation with the training subcommittee chair, Lieutenant Gaudette, we talked about bringing back the 8-hour recertification class to go along with the on-site, to get those inspectors in front of those instructors and subject matter experts on the jail side and the medical side to talk about what you're trained to do and what goes beyond the scope of an FMJS inspector. And I think that's the only way we can do it. You cannot do it online. It doesn't work. A lot of the inspectors out there I'm not familiar with. They have been inspectors for a while. We never see them or talk to them. We're trying to just give the appearance that we are transparent. If we have issues within the way that we do FMJS, that we're willing to clean it up and tighten it up. That was the reason why this came on.
And we'll take the class regionally around the state,
Yes,
so
yes, yes.
there's no travel involved.
To make it convenient to the reason that we got away from it originally, so staff didn't have to leave, didn't incur overtime for staffing. Okay, that was great for a while, but like I said, when David and I see issues, and sometimes we meet with Sheriff Rutherford, we have issues throughout the state. We're trying to clean it up. We will move it around in conversation with Lieutenant Gaudette, and you may want to expand when you talk about training. How many times we'll offer it a year to make it convenient. Agencies have been great offering to be hosts, so it's not the issue of finding host agencies. I think we can accomplish that. We're looking at trying, depending on how the committee votes, starting probably the spring of next year, maybe March or April, to roll this out to get started, to kind of keep everything moving.
I think this is great because having these, it's like anything else. You got to do maintenance.
Yes.
With
Yes.
anything, and with things being fluid, us changing and taking on this process, I think we're obligated to ensure that our inspectors are up to date with the current changes. Will you guys have a schedule? I mean, will y'all start developing a schedule if you want to do it early spring, start kind of forecasting the schedule so that we can get it out to folks? And
Yes, in conversation with Lieutenant Gaudette, we talked about it briefly, but we'll probably talk about it again some more this afternoon to kind of nail down some dates. What we're looking at as an inspector comes up on their 4-year recertification, only do, let's say, everybody that expires in 2015. We can do we look at the list, see how many inspectors we're talking about, how many classes we'll be able to do that to accomplish recertification. So we'll come up with some hard dates and definitely set them out in advance.
is this going to be tracked on their officer profile sheet also with DLE?
I don't know if it's not an ATMS. I don't think it's.
It's not. Should it be? I mean, if we're going to do
This is
this,
really outside of that, though.
is it?
This is in addition to that.
So because we maintain the list now on FMJS, and we will have both recertifications on there, and when they're expired, I mean, we maintain that at an FSA. But like Sheriff Rutherford says, that's something we've never talked about with FDLE, because it's in addition to what they're mandatory training. This is not a mandatory training.
Well,
we can we can take the certification.
Yes.
Right.
We have that.
I was just thinking of whenever, we have all these folks in HR, that whenever you're hiring people, or it would give our HR people the opportunity to look and see what's on their officer profile sheet, to help us make sure we've got somebody who's inspector certified, and it was another tracking. I don't know how much that would.
I think in most agencies, it goes into the officer's training records. I know in Orange County, that's what we did. It was part of that tracking. I would assume everybody else do the same thing.
Yeah, however, the agency wants to keep track of it.
Yes.
Because that's going to be.
Yes.
Sheriff, if I'm in that bureau, we're assigned under that bureau, I can ask the chief there to see if that's something they might add to the profile. But it is in a different part of the Florida Administrative Code. So I don't know if that would fall under their purview or not to add it there, but I'll ask her when I get back. Yes, sir.
Thanks, Billy.
All right. Anybody have an issue with the 8 hours every 4 years? Yes, sir.
I don't have an issue with that. My question is, you're going to require both the online training and the classroom now, or are you getting rid of the online training?
Both.
You're going to do both?
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't think that's
No, not that.
a bad thing. The more exposure they have, and the online stuff can be updated as we go, where you may have a gap between those trainings. Just gives another reference, but I'm all about pulling people together, and that way you can get some feedback directly from your inspectors to find out what else we need to do.
And that's really, I think, the most important part of this is getting folks together. Having been in classes, a lot of discussion and ideas and things come up just through the class discussion. Something that may have never been on the syllabus at all becomes very important. So I think it's a great way to make that happen. All right. Any other discussion? Have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Sheriff Hunter, second by Sheriff Porter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approved.
Then at 2.03, changing it around to where used to be, we just recently, the last meeting, we changed to where the EMTs no longer had to have a 10-year requirement to become a certified 4-mile jail medical inspector. Moved it up to 203A1, and we're adding everybody's certification now expires on the 31st of December, their 4th certification anniversary date. And also that you have to pass the test with 75%.
And this, going to your point, Sheriff Hunter, this will help agencies keep track of them a lot better because they're all in a certain time. At a certain time, they may get it in February or June. You got all these different things to do with it because it's 4 years out from the original study. All righty. Have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Sheriff Borders.
Second.
Second by Sheriff Hunter. All approved, say aye.
Aye.
Standard 302 hotel. This one, this standard here is tied to several different standards. Basically, we struck out a paragraph hotel. We did it. We're removing the paragraph that's from hotel to a different standard. It will come up later. Just renumbered the paragraphs.
Again, like all of these, this meeting, or most of them, they're really cleanups, where things have changed throughout the years, and it's where it really doesn't belong any longer. Can I have a motion to just strike that? Motion by Sheriff Borders, second by Sheriff Hunter. Approved, say aye.
Standard 1106. This was dealing with the recent House bill that passed the requirements, changing checks on juveniles from 15 minutes to 10 minutes. Just to comply with the law that went into effect on 1 July.
So this is
We don't have any choices.
No, this is a statutory update. Yep. All right. Have a motion?
Reluctantly.
Motion by Sheriff Hunter, second by Sheriff Porter, all in favor, say aye.
Okay. Standard 1109.
Yeah, approved for now. We'll be back to revisit that.
Revisit. Standard 1109 is where we, from the previous standard, we moved this standard here and we saw it clearing it up and taking out some of the language that was in the old standard, talking about blackjacks and different types of weapons. Just add some new language. Basically, we're going to leave it up to the problem was that there's agencies that serviced quite a few different municipalities, and they weren't sure what kind of training, and they wanted to be able to bring in their OC or their taser or whatever the case may be. Now it's only going to be authorized if it's authorized by their policy procedure. Not really taking away anything.
This gives individual agencies the ability to determine who's going to carry what inside their facility, which they've got the right to do that. It makes it a little clearer. Yeah, this is kind of clean up.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Sheriff Hunter, second by Sheriff Porter, all in favor, say aye. Approved.
Standard 1801 Bravo, just another standard, dealing with the 10-minute checks for the juveniles.
New state law. Motion by
Borders.
Sheriff Porter, second by Sheriff. All in favor, aye. Like a flavor.
Standard 2004 A and 24B, or 24B, another 10-minute check.
We don't have another one we need to, okay, that's it.
To approve.
Second.
Motion by Sheriff Hunter, second by Sheriff Porter, approved, say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Next item is the task force update. We met in this facility yesterday, about 8 hours. We continued our review of the different chapters of Florida jail standards. We made it all the way up to chapter 12. And we have a next meeting scheduled for the 6th of November, day prior to our next FNJS meeting. We'll be submitting those recommendations to the full committee at that time. Do you have any, Isaiah, any other updates as far as task force?
Not that one, but I'll
Okay.
talk about those.
All right. Compliance committee? Beth?
We are currently reviewing the report submitted, and we will have a full report at the next meeting on the results of that. So far, we haven't really come across any notable issues, any training issues or consistency issues. We've passed off the training and they're incorporating it into the class coming up.
We're approximately at the same area that we were last year as far as the reports coming in. A lot of people like to wait. I don't know whether it's because of budgetary restraints or whatever, but they like to wait till after the 1st of October to get their reports in. Seems like we get the majority up between October and December. Training committee.
Good morning. We have our next, both jail inspector and medical inspector class scheduled last week of October. We'll be over in Broward County. And now with the approval for changing a requirement, adding an 8-hour training in there, compiling some of the feedback that we've gotten in our past couple of inspector classes, as well as the partnership that we now have with Florida Pac about doing jail updates. The class coming up in October is getting basically a full rewrite on the training material, expanding on the standards, being instructed to identify standards that have documentation review and ones that are observable things. And then we're going to carry some of the feedback again into our 8-hour class. Tentatively, I'm going to host that either March, April, and that'll be at my agency in Charlotte County. That'll give me an opportunity to go through a trial run where I'm at a facility that I can make changes on the fly to the material, and then at that point we'll be able to roll out a schedule based on the number of attendees to that class versus the number of inspectors that expire in 2015. And actually looking at the demographics as to where those inspectors are at and try to be in agencies that are in close proximity to those inspectors to try to minimize costs and travel and stuff like that. Yes, sir. That's all I have today.
Good, thank you. Look, I tell you, I think this is going to be a big step forward. Having these folks, instead of just doing this peer review kind of thing, I think it's going to be a much better process, I believe. So, thank you for all your work on that. We'll make it work. We'll move them around, and whatever we need help, we'll find it, I'm sure. So,
Medical stuff?
We haven't had anything referred to us. I'm working with Lieutenant Claudette on, I did the medical section of a revised checklist, different task force that we're working on to try and give them those proof requirements for what they need, whether it be observable or documentation. So that was submitted, I understand, yesterday for review to see if that's a direction that you would like us to move forward in. I do have one question. I would like to try and get some clarification as to the facilities all on here that are exempt from medical inspections. We asked that at our task force meeting, and it's not quite sure how that came about, but with these being minimum standards, I'm not quite sure how somebody is exempt. And there's quite a few throughout the list that are exempt from medical inspections.
yeah,
Let me respond to that, David.
Yeah, go ahead.
Christine's correct. We did discuss that and how that came about. I talked with David's predecessor, Sergeant Harvey's predecessor, Lieutenant Owens, how that came up. Never really got into details how that came about, but it was a decision that was made by the former Sheriff Dean, to do that. I kind of agree with Christine. These are minimum standards, even if they are not inspected. There has to be some type of process to it, because all jails, regardless, have some type of medical oversight, medical protocols. They all have it. I've been to them. Lack of inspection doesn't mean that they don't have medical oversight. I think we talked to the chair about that a couple months ago, about, how are we going to proceed with that? And that's the dilemma on the FSA side we have. The committee has to, we're asking for guidance, I think, is what Christine asked us, what should we do? Do we do just a cursory walkthrough or inspection, whatever you want to call it, or do we do a full inspection? Because those facilities with 20 beds or less, believe me, they don't have any type of full-time medical. It's just not possible. But they do have some oversight.
Christina, I mean, you've been in more of them than I have. My understanding was that these facilities were exempted because they don't have on-site medical. Everybody that needs medical goes to a medical facility somewhere in the county. They're not, they're so small that they don't have anything, that it's all exported, so to speak.
Well, Sheriff Rutherford, I actually haven't been in the exempt ones because Donna Wainwright now is her name, usually does all the panhandle inspections, but I can say that our standards were made to be minimum so that I still think they could be in compliance, because if they don't have it on site, like the standards will say, there's just an agreement. It can be brought off site, and as far as not having medical personnel, you can have qualified trained people pass medications, so they can, there's still ways to meet these standards without having it in-house, but in my opinion, if I may, just saying they're exempt, kind of states they don't need to meet those minimum standards, and it kind of, to me, takes away from what we're trying to do with them meeting minimum standards. Even if it's off-site, they can meet them. Like Isaiah said, they have those capabilities, they're just not doing it in-house.
Now, a couple of them are work release.
Standing in the electric.
Pardon me?
Just standing in the electric.
Right, and
Well, that's not our work release, that's the road camp, which is a little different. But, you know, still there's medical care being provided there. And so, and like Christine says, you could still say that's not applicable because you don't have medical staff on board. But for things like medication pass, somebody's passing meds. It's not a medical person. It's a correctional officer that's been trained to do that. So that still needs to be checked by somebody.
yes, ma'am.
I'm Annie, I'm on Christine's subcommittee for medical. I've created this a great deal of thought the last time we brought this up, because I personally think it's disturbing. Things change, populations change, the way you approach things change, and take Monroe County, for example. They have 3 jails, and the first 2 in the Keys do not have around-the-clock medical care, but there's a nurse that travels. So when I do their report, a great deal of them are NA, but there's still a great deal of them that they comply with, and they have a plan in place to handle whatever problem arises medically. These people still have to have intakes. So that part of the standards for medical, they would have to comply with. Now, how to make this happen? I thought about this, and I was thinking that, you know, a very nice, fluffy little letter, as not to irritate anybody, that says, you know, formerly, you know, things have been looked at a little differently, but things change, times change, that in order to apply for an exemption, yours will expire. To apply for an exemption, we need your rationale, send it to y'all, and then we can deny it. and that, you know, you need to either update, or we can, and then get the chance to get in there and look at it, because I think as responsible people, nobody's been in there to see this medical in forever.
Yeah.
I can say I've gone to 3 of these, Liberty, Union, and I've been to Gold. And they do have medical protocols. They do. They just don't have that 24/7 coverage. And I'm in agreement as far as speaking for FSA that the exemption should be removed to me, because FMJS says medical and operational review. And I think we should be, as we clean up this process. It's not a long and extensive process to do a 20-bed jail for medical. It's not. Most of the things on the checklist would be NA anyway because it's external. I think the issue that we have a problem with, I think on both sides, and probably for the committee, that word exemption, the standard doesn't talk about anything about exemption. It never has. That was never the intent.
The statute doesn't either.
The statute doesn't either. One is correct. Statute doesn't. I think we're trying to do the right thing by cleaning up a lot of things at FMJS, and that's just one of those old things we probably need to clean up.
I would think that we get a recommendation from the medical folks to say, okay, at least have a policy in place that says if you don't have on-site, here's our contract facility, or here's how we're doing it, and give them something to go by so we don't make it go through a big ordeal. Because I can tell you, in these smaller agencies, it's going to be tough on them. But as long as they've got their contracts in place and they're following that, if you go in there and you can follow the paper trail to say, okay, we received one in, prior to receiving them, they get entry, they check them out at the hospital, okay, check, yes, they're following the procedure. I personally don't like the word exempt on this. it just doesn't follow what we're trying to accomplish. And with us taking that on, folks looking at it from outside, it's like, well, how, you know, they're
How
just.
do you get that?
Yeah, I mean, and we already have a stigma with the smaller agencies of being kind of backwoodsy and country and all that, you know, so this doesn't do anything but help, you know.
Perpetuate that.
So I don't like seeing this on here, and you know, when you look at Alachua County exempt, I mean, my goodness, that's a large county, although it's the work camp, it still puts a stigma to it, and makes it look like we don't have a standard for them to meet, so.
Yeah, I'm not sure. When did these exemptions get passed?
They've been there as
Anybody
long
know?
as I've been here, which is like 8 years now.
Yeah. And, I understand the intent, well-intended, but I go along with your point about things change, you know, and I think with us coming together as a, you know, as an oversight and as, you know, being in charge of this, we just need to get some folks on board and say, look, we're not going to come in here with a hammer, but as long as you're doing, you know, appropriately, you know, you're contracting out. I mean, we're not going to leave anybody and pile them up in a jail cell and not check on them for 2 days, you know, like the old school, you know.
Are there guidelines, I mean, if you were going to inspect a facility that did not have on-site medical, I mean, do you have rules for that to check, or will you be, I mean, using a checklist on a facility that has medical, I mean, which means that they wouldn't be in compliance with almost all of them? I agree with the two sheriffs here. I mean, I don't agree with exempting jails just because they don't have, I mean, there should be some guidelines, some checklists that we can make sure that the minimum standards are being met medically in those facilities.
That is how the standards are worded now. They don't say on site, and that's like Annie was saying in the Keys, they don't have them on site. We have, all of them have an NA if it doesn't apply.
Right.
And it just that this stuff is available. It doesn't say it has to be on site. So that's why I'm saying to remove that exemption, you know, Isaiah's been to them, they are doing it, but nobody's just making sure that they're meeting these minimum standards, whether it be off-site or not.
If I may, standard 7.01, which is the medical section, there shall be an agreement with a health authority licensed in the state of Florida for the provision of medical care and services as set forth with the rest of it. That right there is the caveat. There has to be an agreement with a licensed health authority to provide care. And whether it's internal or external, it's really irrelevant. And then from that point on, everything that's in Chapter 7, because it's external, if it doesn't apply, it's NA. But that at least gives the oversight that somebody has checked to make sure that these facilities are at least providing the care. And they're already doing it, we just don't check it.
Well, first off, you just got to validate that they have the contract in place, and that's there. And then you dovetail off of that and just go in there and pull a few records to, you know, you can, during your inspection, to say, okay, they received X amount of inmates, these required medical attention, and then you just show that they're getting that. Spot check that out, and then I would say, you know, that's what they can do, that's what they can accomplish within their funding for their, you know, their facilities, and that's, you know, and that's adequate. That's what they can provide.
Many facilities, I just got a phone call on a last inspection, their health authority was a local hospital.
Right.
I mean, they don't have it in-house, even ones that are being inspected, so.
Or the health department.
Health
they
department,
have
some
contracts.
use.
Local doctor's
Right.
office, I had one county that was a local doctor's office, and it worked, and they were in compliance. Transparent, let me see everything, perfect. And they weren't large at all. Actually, they're also
I'm not
FCC.
sure how this even got started.
I think they were scared of the, not having the funding and being able to meet a standard, so they plugged that in there for the smaller agencies and to accommodate them. I'm assuming.
I just think somebody ought to be going to those facilities and at least making sure they have a minimum, you know, contract with an outside provider. I don't think that's a lot to ask for.
But if we, let's entertain a motion that we send a letter to the agencies that have exemptions for medical, And, well, I guess first, I think we need to decide, as a commission, whether we want to end these exemptions. I think we have the statutory authority to do that, particularly since I don't believe there's any statutory authority to do this, to exempt it, is what I'm hearing. Is that correct?
No, there's never been, and I think Sheriff Hunter mentioned it, I think it was over time to accommodate those 50 or 20 bed jails. We didn't have anything to subject them to a medical inspection, but like Christine said, most of it's going to be NA. The important thing, like Joe said, is that agreement with the local health authority. Like I said, I have been to them. They are providing that, either health-trained staff at the initial intake or agreement with the local hospital. So they are doing what they're supposed to do.
But the statute that you just read about, they have to have a contract or either provide that service.
Yes.
I mean,
It's a serious violation if you don't have it.
Yes, if they all have.
so I mean, but the thing that we're gonna have to be careful here is that they don't get the perception or perceive that we're coming in with a hammer. They need to understand that, look,
It's the law.
this statute here, you're already doing this, we're just cleaning this up to where, there are no exemptions. You're still responsible for that, because this is in the legal arena
I
there.
agree.
And be a dogfight that would cost a lot of money.
Okay, so
It's about the language.
I guess we're all in agreement then. Okay, well, I guess, I entertain a motion to remove all exemptions by December 31st.
I'd make that motion.
Of 2014.
Right, in 2014. Okay, so we have a motion by Sheriff Borders to eliminate all medical exemptions by December 31st of 2014. And we will notify those affected agencies by letter immediately, Bud, and let them know and give them some guidance on what is the expected.
I'll draft a letter.
It would that would be the date to remove it, but then they would have that following year.
To get it in compliance. Right. And we'll make that clear in the letter.
Yeah.
Fine, I'll make it clear in letters, you wouldn't be required to have inspection until by December 31st. I'd like to have it before
Right.
December 31st, but 2015, sometime during 2015.
Right, right. They will have to have a medical sometime during 2015. Okay, so that is the motion, that all exemptions will be removed by December 31st, 2014.
That's the motion.
And that's the motion by
I'll
Sheriff
second.
Ward, second by Sheriff Hunter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Good job. Good job.
Thanks, Annie, for volunteering to go.
Yes.
I'm sure Captain Ross will be able to spare you. Thank you.
Actually,
I nominate that.
No problem. I love that area.
Yeah, I'm not sure how. I've been doing this almost 12 years. I don't know when it got started. I guess all the way back to 33-8. I don't know.
And it may have been when we changed in '96, I don't know, when Pinellas was doing it, when it went over to Marion. Nobody can tell me when it happened.
Yeah.
David, do you remember your stamp? Kevin, you all remember any of that? So we got some long-term members of standards review. I don't remember it.
Well, we will change that. Okay. Thank you, Christine. Okay, open forum.
Okay, I'm going to give my report from the Florida Sheriff's Association.
All right.
As of our last conference, we do have a new president of the Sheriff's Association, Sheriff David Shore of St. John's Sheriff's Office, and the new Board of Director Chairman is Sheriff Atkinson of Walton County. Sarah Carroll is no longer with the Florida Sheriff's Association. She works for Southern Strategies. Matt Donegan came over from the Attorney General's office. He's the new Assistant Executive Director for Operations. He will probably be here for the next meeting just to kind of meet and greet. Task force update, David did give that update. We will have a new task force that was approved by the chair to look at code of conduct for jail inspectors. Tina Chapman from, stand up, from Clay County Sheriff's Office will be the chair of that. So we're probably going to have some items in the works to try to tighten up code of conduct for us as jail inspectors. Thanks, Tina. We also have members of the current task force. If y'all can stand up to be recognized, please. If you don't know who they are, they have been working hard, diligently trying to take on this monstrous task of revising Florida model jail standards, and they're doing a great job. Thank you. I'd also like to recognize a couple of folks in the audience. We have Billy Walls from our partner FCAC Florida Accreditation here. Thank you. We have a couple of jail administrators here also. Joe Lucas from Columbia. Joe. We have Chris Roberts from Collier. Made that long drive. Becky Quinteri from Flagler is here. Joe talked about, Lieutenant Cadet talked about the training that's coming up the week of October 27th through the 31st down in Pompano Beach. Broward County Sheriff's Office gracefully hosted that class. We do have a lot of our members in our Sheriff's Office in the counties that are seeking office through the American Correctional Association. We have Don Ross, who was nominated for the Commission on Accreditation for Corrections, right, Don? We have Mike Page that was nominated for the Board of Governors, Tim Age, Sandra Wajardo, and I think Keith Neely, Delegate Assembly. Am I right, Don? I think I got everybody. I don't think I missed everybody. If you're an ACA member, make sure you vote. I think most of us voted to Florida tickets, so we're well represented. Also, Don Ross serves in the role as an FCAC Commissioner. Don, stand up. This is not a sit-down meeting. I don't understand. Congratulations to Jacksonville and Manatee for receiving their ACA accreditation. We have Michelle Price and her assistant Thad that's here. I don't even know Thad's last name. But you see, Michelle, stand up. Well done. Well done.
Chief, Director Wells couldn't think of it.
She couldn't think of it either.
She called Thad in the unit.
There you go. Congratulations to them on receiving their accreditation. We also have a couple of jails that are, and Orange County Corrections, I'm sorry. Thanks, Sean. Also, we have a couple of agencies that are fully compliant with PREA, Santa Rosa, Manatee, and Baker. We have some agencies that are going through the finishing touches and will be compliant. Collier, Osceola, Seminole, and Volusia that's coming up. There are some other agencies that are looking at the process. Seminole County, did you get it finally? Yeah. Congratulations to Seminole County. They are fully compliant with PREA. We have the Corrections Officer Year nominations that will be going out. The flyers will be going out next month. Last year, we only had 8 submissions, which I know we can do better than 8 throughout the state. The committee consists of Assistant Chief Darrell Daniels from Jacksonville, Patty Killam from Santa Rosa, Joyce Arnold from Liberty, Anthony Champion from the IG's office, and myself. We will be the selection committee.
Yeah, let me say something about that.
Yes, sir.
It really is a shame sometimes that officers will really go above and beyond, put their lives in danger, do all sorts of great things out there in our facilities, but nobody ever hears about it because their first line supervisor is lazy, doesn't want to write it up. That's a shame. That is a shame. Now, if he does something halfway decent, he's got a supervisor that's pretty sharp and energetic, it gets written up, it gets sent in, that shouldn't be the determining factor. Folks, we need to, and I know we got a lot of line level people in here, but we got some ranking people in here too. We need to make sure that your officers are being recognized for the good work they're doing. It's too easy for that to not happen. And this is it's really a great honor for the agency, for the officer. at these banquets where this award is given, and they do an amazing job of presenting the officer and the event. So encourage your people back home, recognize these guys when they do something that's outstanding. So, because I can tell you this, what gets punished doesn't always stop. Let's just find a better way of doing it. But what gets rewarded gets repeated. So that's what we need to remember. Okay? Thanks.
To echo what the sheriff says, when I look at my law enforcement counterpart, when they get submissions, they get over 30. And I struggle with getting just 8. And I know there's a lot of correction folks as I travel around the state, and like the sheriff said, it's great work. And they are never recognized, and I don't understand that. So please, I really need your help when these go out. FSA has been asked to post an opening for jail administrator for the Seminole County Sheriff's Office. I think they went out to all the sheriffs and jail administrators. The current administrator is looking to retire for the 3rd time. So hopefully they'll let him go this time. FSA is getting ready for our fleet conference. Normally the jail side we don't participate in, but I have been asked to try to solicit and have some jail administrators to come to the conference just to see what's out there, because we use a lot of vehicles on the jail side. Usually they're purchased by someone else and we never see them. But they're trying to make us, my thing for corrections, to make us inclusive into the criminal justice process at every level, federal, state, and local, as much as I can. And you guys have been great supports in doing that. The committee, with the sheriffs here, and some of you. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Isaiah. I think, is St. Johns County, anybody here from St. Johns? Are you guys looking for a jail administrator?
Seminole County.
Yes, we have ours is also, but I believe the sheriff is going to fill it from.
Seminole. Alrighty. Anybody else open forum?
Sheriff, Director Mizell was wanting me to ask, now, as we understand y'all are changing your system to more of a system, getting away from the peer review, will y'all be assigning teams and sending them out at designated times instead of the agency scheduling their inspection?
Yes.
I guess just so we don't overlap, we use a lot of the same assessors, and we're coming into our heavy cycle. And so I was just curious how we could work that.
Coordinate that with ACA?
What we're looking at doing, Billy, myself, Captain Ross, and Joe Gaudet is going to sit down and talk about, with the vision of the committee, how that's going to work. But I'm glad you brought that up so we don't overlap. The sheriff's goal was to get away from, not that anything wrong with the peer review at some level, but as I go around and observe some of the inspections, and I look at, facility type, I believe in transparency. I don't have a problem, Sheriff, what I see with other inspectors or with the sheriff when there is need to. When you go to a large facility and an inspector is inspecting not the way they should be, I have some questions about that. So we're looking at tightening up that process, maybe going to a core group that will cover the state. And we're looking at how we want to break that down, but certainly with what FCAC does, coordinating to make sure we don't overlap, maybe when ACA come in and all these other partners that we don't overlap. I think that's the goal of the committee of what we want to do. We want to do it consistently and fairly, and the only way you can't do that with 300 inspectors. You just can't. There's nothing wrong with having that reserved number, but to tighten up a core group that we are consistent and we all are on the same page.
And that helps us, and that's why this committee or task force to look at, a code for the inspectors. How are they going to behave? What are they going to do? How do you inspect and do it professionally so that the product is beneficial to all the stakeholders, the sheriff and whoever's responsible for that facility, the inmates that are being housed there, the officers that have to work there, you know, the general public, we all benefit from a good inspection process. And so we just want to take it to the next level. And I think this is going to help us get there, and this task force is going to make sure we do it the right way. But that's a great issue on the coordination, because we run across that ourselves. Okay, anything else? Sheriffs?
I just wanted to say thank you to all the committees with the hard work that y'all are doing. I mean, we come up here and pretty much just kind of sit through all of y'all's hard work, and you know, I'm glad Isaiah had you guys stand up and be recognized. I mean, it's tough. I mean, and getting back through and going all the documents and everything y'all are having to go through. I understand, but I just want to say thank y'all so much, because it makes our job so much easier up here. And looking down range as to where we want to be, I mean, we're heading in that direction, and it's because of y'all's hard work. And thank y'all so much for everything you're doing.
Sheriff, I do have one item before we wrap it up. As we go through and making the changes in the standards, lots of times they affect the checklist. I'd like to be able to, the task force as a group, go ahead and make changes without having to bring them to you or to the committee. We go ahead and make the changes.
Yeah, to bring that, yeah.
Without bringing it from
The checklist.
Do we need to have that as far as the vote to say that if anything affects the checklist from what we did here, that they're authorized to go ahead and make those changes?
Yeah, I think let's
You want to do that?
yeah, let's make a motion on that. If that is that your
That's my motion, is to allow the committees to, anything that we approve here, they're allowed to make those changes on the checklist that directly affect that checklist by that committee without board approval.
I'll second.
That's a motion, second by Sheriff Borders. All in favor, say aye.
Thank you, sir.
So granted. All right.
That's it.
And I want to close by echoing what Sheriff Hunter said. As you know, as you look at some of these changes that we have made just today, you look at that and you go, wow, that's pretty silly stuff. But you know what? If you don't go back and go through these, you know, we haven't had a full review since the transition from 33-8. And that's why some of these silly things are still in there. And so it is tedious work. We realize that. We realize that, you know, it's not all great ideas. It's just little tweaking things here and there, but it's all important. And so thank you guys. I want to echo that. Thank you to all the committees that have tediously gone through all these documents. So thank you all. All right.
All right.
Motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor? Heck yeah. All right. Thank you
Send it to you. That's what I'm talking about. Department of Justice.